Author's Corner. Boy, the name of the book is Life Isn't Fair, But God Is. Down-to-earth words to live by, the Reverend Dr. Wilbert Donald Gough. Boy, so many credentials to this man. A winning way to a new you. You can really learn a lot from him. In our virtual green room, I am pleased to welcome to America tonight with me, Kate Delaney, Wilbert Donald Gough Jr., a.k.a. Don. And is he not so lucky to have been with this man, been a part of this family? And wait till you hear the story. So, Don, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Kate, for having me. His story is an incredible story. 104 years and 2 months. Can you believe he spent that long on this earth? God let him live that long?
Wow. It's crazy, too, all the things that he accomplished and how much influence he had on so many people's lives. Tell us a story about the beginning of what your father's life was like.
Well, Abraham Lincoln, they say, was born in a log cabin. Well, my dad was literally born in the middle of a cotton patch in Oklahoma, where they would grow cotton, and they had these cotton gins in Davidson, Oklahoma. We often refer to it as a wide spot in the road. That's where my grandmother's, his mother's sisters lived, and they were the midwives birthing my dad. After the birth, they then drove their Model T or whatever they were using at that point in time back to Dallas, and he grew up in Texas, in Dallas, until they decided that they wanted to move to New Mexico, and they got halfway to New Mexico, and they stopped in this little town called Graham, Texas, and that's where he grew up.
Wow, and if we fast forward to other parts of his life, and of course all of this is in the book, which you can get on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever great books are sold. I mean, he worked as a department store accountant until World War II. Then he decided to serve his country, jumped into the Navy. And take us from what you know of what happened in the Navy to then Philadelphia in the Naval Yard.
So he was all about God, family, and country. And he grew up in a household that always tried to focus on what would God have you do. And he was all prepared to serve in the family way of doing it that way until World War II, and he decided he needed to serve his country. Went to Norfolk, wherever the Navy was recruiting people, to Philadelphia. He then had his life changed as a result of being in a big city with everything that it had to offer. And what it had to offer is a different way of looking at the world and an education capability in the town of Philadelphia, because he wanted to know as much as he possibly could learn in order for him to be able to serve God. So he attended, 2, 3, 4 schools while he was in the Navy, and then he got out of the Navy because he had a health problem, got an honorable discharge. He met my mom, and together they decided to build a life together serving God. Now, what does that mean? What that means is you talk to people in a very common sense way about how God can work in their lives, as well as how God works in other people's lives. So that's where it started, in Philadelphia.
So as a kid, what did you learn, Don, from him that you carry around today that you think people will really feel when they read this book?
So what I learned from him in retrospect, and then when I was a kid, I had a hard time getting my head around. What I learned from him in retrospect is that you need to take control of your own life, and you need to have self-discipline relative to what is the right thing to do. And I hated not being able to watch TV on Sundays because I had to go to church in the morning, I had to go to church at night, I couldn't play basketball with my friends because my dad was taking a nap. And on Monday morning, when everybody was talking about what was going on at Gunsmoke, I couldn't participate. But what I learned was there should be at least one day where you set aside time for you to think about what is it you're doing and why are you doing it.
Wow. That's something to think about. There's a big hashtag, why are you doing it? The other thing about him, I think, from our off-air conversation that was so interesting is that, of course, he had an impact on the community. He was very involved. What kind of organizations did he lead or was he a part of?
That's a really good question. So he started a small church in Philadelphia, Manitoba Baptist Church. And then he was the pastor of the Falls of Schuylkill Baptist Church. And then after a while, one of the other graduates of Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary who lived in Michigan said, there's a guy that I met at the seminary. I think he'd be an ideal pastor for Mount Clemens, Michigan. So at the age of 7, and my sister at that point was 4, my dad packed up the family and we moved to Mount Clemens, Michigan, a small little town about 20 miles northeast of Detroit. And he joined a church that was in a theological dilemma. Half of the church had left because they couldn't agree in terms of how God works in this world. And he took this church and he grew it. They ended up selling the downtown church building and they bought land outside of the town. They built a huge church. They built a place for the custodian to live. And he was there for 10 years. And then he got called to serve a church in Waterloo, Iowa. And he was there for a number of years. And then the First Baptist Church of Clarksburg, West Virginia had heard about him. And they recruited him to come to Clarksburg, West Virginia. Now, the reason why he went there is because they broadcast the services every Sunday morning. And he loved what Billy Graham did. And he wanted to emulate Billy Graham. And then he was very self-disciplined to be able to start the service at 10 o'clock and have it end exactly at 11 o'clock. And people loved him for his self-discipline and the way in which he got people to think about how they can serve God while changing their life and becoming happy and joyous.
What were his sermons like? I mean, he must have related to people just based on what you just said right there.
Well, when I was a kid, I didn't like listening to his sermons. And I often thought it'd be really cool if there were cartoons of what he was trying to say up on the wall so as young kids could be engaged in what he was saying, because he was talking about adult things, not things that the kid would understand. But then when I became an adult, he was very methodical in terms of the way he would put a sermon together. He would have more or less 3 themes. He would use words in a way that there was alliteration so that people can remember it. He had this way of wanting people to come and listen to him talk for about 15 or 20 minutes every Sunday morning, because when they left, they felt they had got something of value to get them through the next 6 days before they had to show up again and fill up their bucket of hope.
And it says it all in the title. Life isn't fair, but God is. Down to earth words to live by, a winning way to a new use. So he knew how to use the words from the Bible and make them relatable, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very simple. You have God that sets the standard of how you should behave. Jesus, who was God with skin on, showing exactly how you should behave when you're dealing with a person one-on-one or 102. But the thing that holds it all together is the Holy Spirit. And what is the Holy Spirit? The Spirit is the way in which we relate to each other, the way in which we feel about each other. And that's it. That's all he was trying to do, was trying to communicate that in words that people individually could relate, could just say, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. Oh, and here's a story where it is the application. And then here's something that relates back to what the Old Testament had to say about this particular problem, or what the New Testament had to say about this particular problem. So we tried to make the Bible come to life in today's age. And I'm telling you, it's really difficult right now when you have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, all this computer stuff. telling you the way in which you should think. It's hard.
It is hard. Would your dad say that?
Yes. This is what we ended up talking about the last 4 years of his life. He was my dad, more or less, until he became 100. And then over the next 4 years, he became my friend. And we could talk about real life issues as opposed to he being my father that I go for counsel, advice, etc., etc. And that was what's incredible about his life. He was there until the very end. The hospice nurse basically said, I can't believe what's going on in his brain. He's still trying to get his words and his sentence correctly. And he recognizes that he misplaced a word, and then he would struggle to come back and say it correctly. Think about that. Think about the implications of what was going on in his brain, in his mind. And he was so focused on making sure he had the credentials so that people would respect what he had to say.
Yeah. We have 40 seconds left. What do you hope people take away from reading his book?
That, in fact, if you do look to God for hope, and you embrace what Jesus is trying to say, and you associate yourselves with those with a spirit, you will have a joyous life, and you will live on the fuller side of fair, and you will end up being satisfied that there is a purpose for your life in this world.
Perfect place to end this. The book is Life Isn't Fair, But God Is, Down-to-Earth Words to Live By, Reverend Dr. Wilbert Donald Gough. So interesting. Again, Don's father, a winning way to a new you. Thanks, Don.
Kate, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed this conversation with you. I'll be glad to do it anytime again.